When we study ancient India, our attention is almost always pulled to the north and the mighty Mauryan Empire. We picture the vast edicts of Ashoka and his iconic stone lion capitals. Foreign scholars, like the Greek writer Megasthenes, attempted to document this era, but when they looked toward the deep south, their records thin out. They mention three kingdoms by name, the Cholas, the Cheras, and the Pandyas, but provide almost zero detail about how these people actually lived or governed. Yet the physical landscape of the south reveals something entirely different. This is a megalithic burial tomb. Long before detailed foreign accounts were written, the people here were engineering massive boulders to construct complex, enduring structures for their dead. To figure out how a society capable of moving these massive stones actually functioned, foreign name-dropping isn't enough. We have to hear from the people who built them.
Currently, archaeologists are excavating a site in Tamil Nadu called Kiladi. The artifacts emerging from these trenches suggest that urbanization in the south might be far older than the accepted northern timeline, prompting historians to rethink the origins of Indian civilization. For centuries, the Pandya kings sponsored massive literary assemblies called muchangams, convening the region's most prominent sages and poets to record their world. These scholars composed an enormous body of Tamil literature during a period we now call the Sangam Age. Thousands of these texts survived on delicate palm leaves exactly like this. The history of the Deep South was preserved through this meticulously catalogued literary tradition, providing a high-definition look at an advanced society. Curious, these poems and texts let us track exactly how the Southern economy evolved. The entire shift traces back to the delayed arrival of a single disruptive material, iron. This map shows the downward flow of iron technology across the Indian subcontinent. As the knowledge of forging strong tools finally reached the Deep South, it allowed communities to clear dense forests and shift into a highly productive agricultural society. With enough surplus crops to feed the population, workers pivoted to specialized exports. The Cholas dominated the market for high-quality woven cotton, while the Pandyas harvested prized pearls directly from the ocean floor. This rapid export boom drew foreign merchants straight to southern trade hubs like the port of Muziris, and they paid in hard currency. These are ancient Roman coins, discovered in South India, covered in Latin script and the profiles of emperors. The Sangam literature catalogues a lucrative, globally integrated Iron Age economy, operating completely independent of the North. To understand the people driving this economy, we have to look at their narratives. The crowning achievement of Tamil literature is an epic poem called the Silappatikaram. The story follows a woman named Kannagi and her husband Kovalan. After Kovalan squanders their wealth on another woman, he realizes his mistake. Kannagi forgives him, and the couple leaves the Chola kingdom to start fresh in neighboring Pandya territory. To fund their new life, Kannagi gives Kovalan her precious anklet to sell in the market. But the Pandya king's guards mistake it for the queen's recently stolen anklet, and the king immediately executes Kovalan without a trial. When Kannagi learns of the execution, she storms the Pandya court, proves her husband's innocence, and delivers a supernatural curse. She condemns the king to death, and then unleashes a roaring fire that engulfs Madurai, the Pandya capital. The aftermath of this tragedy crosses into a third territory. The Chera king hears of Kannagi's fierce devotion and decides she must be worshipped. He launches a military expedition all the way to the Himalayan mountains just to retrieve a sacred stone to carve her idol. This epic weaves the Cholas, Pandyas, and Cheras into a single, continuous narrative. It proves that despite their defined borders, these three rival kingdoms shared a deeply unified cultural and religious framework. Sharing a culture did not mean they shared a peaceful coexistence. Beneath the poetry, these three kingdoms waged a 6th-century war for total supremacy over the south. This map illustrates the long-standing military stalemate of the era. The Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas were locked in a tense gridlock, with no single kingdom able to overpower the other two. That balance finally broke with the rise of a Chola king named Karikala. He launched a military campaign to push his borders outward, threatening the autonomy of his neighbors. In response, the Cheras and Pandyas paused their own rivalry and formed a massive military alliance, pulling in 11 local chieftains to create a combined front designed to stop the Chola expansion. The cultural unity found in Sangam poetry existed alongside a brutal political reality, a military landscape where losing a single conflict could mean the permanent erasure of a kingdom. This map details the Battle of Veni. Despite facing a coalition from multiple flanks, Karikala's Chola forces dismantled the confederacy. With the southern armies broken, Karikala rapidly expanded the Chola territory, absorbing his rival's lands to become lord of the Tamil land. While the Mauryan Empire in the north eventually fractured and fell to foreign invasions, these southern kingdoms endured. They survived their internal wars and built the economic foundation for the massive empires that would dominate medieval India. The Sangam age demonstrates how South India built its own distinct history, recorded in its own iron, its own blood, and the verses of its poets.